everyone, and welcome to the first installment of not only the J&R Sports Talk Show, but the Monsignor Farrell Podcast Network. Super excited to finally get the Monsignor Farrell Podcast Network up and running. So what the Monsignor Farrell Podcast Network is, it's a place for students and the Farrell family to express their creativity, students, alumni, talk about sports and pop culture. So I am James Westgate, joined here today by my co-host, Ralph Donniacuo. What's up, Ralph? And we are just super excited to finally get this running. It's been in the works for a while. So me and Ralphie, we were going to do the J&R Sports Talk Show. So we basically are just going to talk about Big Four sports, college sports. And yeah, that's really it. The Monsignor Farrell Podcast Network is going to also have a bunch of other podcasts, whether we have a Marvel podcast in the works, we know that's coming, and I believe our producer, Mr. Peter Kennedy, also has his own on the way. So that's pretty much it for our introduction. So right away, let's get into it. So the topics for today, we're going to be talking about the NFL, obviously Super Bowl weekend upcoming. Then we're going to have the NBA, and then transition into the MLB, the end of the offseason, kind of give our recap and our thoughts on how that went. So starting it right away, NFL, Super Bowl time, Chiefs versus, the Philadelphia Eagles. So Ralphie, give us your pick right away, Chiefs versus Eagles. Who you got?
Eagles, easily. I think they kill the Chiefs. The Chiefs, playing with an injured quarterback, not going to be 100% by game time, and the Eagles just have such an amazing team, whether it be their defensive backs, O-line, they have it all, really. There's not a single position on the field that they are weak in, really, at this point.
So I'm going to have a disagreement here. First ever talk on the podcast show. I'll have a disagreement here. I'm a big Chiefs guy. I think the Chiefs, I just have what it takes. Chris Jones, we finally saw him produce in the playoffs, which you feel the Chiefs have been missing from him. 2 sacks, played one of the best games of his career. And I think Mahomes just has that big game experience. Jalen Hurts does not have that big game experience. Nick Sirianni as well as a coach. The whole Chiefs team is used to this atmosphere. I think they're hot. They played great in the playoffs against the Bengals. Defense a little rough, but they had a great game. And I think even though the Eagles did steamroll through the whole NFC, I do think the Chiefs are going to get it done.
I'm going to still disagree there. I feel like the Chiefs, in a close game with the Bengals, they're going to go take on the Eagles, and they're supposed to beat them. I don't know how that's going to work. In that game, in my opinion, the refs bailed them out several times. End of the game. What's your opinion?
I don't know. Thing with the Eagles' trenches are the best. They've been playing insane. The offensive line, defensive line, Blaine Johnson, Brandon Brooks, just been very, very good. Tough to get any pressure on Jalen Hurts. That's the thing, especially against the Giants, was the clean pocket. People want to say that a lot of holding going on, but that Eagles offensive line has been so solid, and I think it's what has led them to this far. And the Chiefs' defensive line has been scary. Chris Jones, as I said, coming off of that elite performance, I think the Chiefs are going to be able to pick apart that Eagles offensive line a little bit, cause Jalen Hurts some trouble, and I think they're going to come out on top. The 2 weeks to prepare. Patrick Mahomes, once again, has that experience. So
you want to talk about the Chiefs D-line, talk about the Eagles O-line too. Who has been able to pressure Jalen Hurts this season?
No one, exactly. There's
right. There's been nobody who's been able to pressure Jalen Hurts. So what makes you think that this D-line is just going to do it now in the Super Bowl? Experience, that's really the only thing you have going for you there. This O-line is going to kill that Chiefs D-line.
Also, though, the Eagles O-line has not really faced, and definitely have never faced an interior D-lineman like Chris Jones, because there is no interior D-lineman like Chris Jones. Blocked out Dexter Lawrence a couple weeks back, but, Dexter Lawrence, great pass rusher, but he is probably the best run stopper in the league. So I think they haven't seen someone like Chris Jones, and he truly is a game changer. And I think we're going to see that this Super Bowl Sunday. working on that interior offensive line of the Eagles. Jason Kelce, one of the best centers of all time as well. Like to your point, the Eagles' offensive line is obviously very, very good, but I don't know why, just a feeling of me tells me that the Chiefs' D-line is going to come out on top of that battle, and it's going to be the ultimate X factor in that game.
Now, Kelce versus Kelce.
Travis Kelce, too. I mean, you can't ignore him. The guy has just been doing it. Top 5 tight end of all time, no doubt. And he's another 1,000-yard season, pretty sure, right? How many touchdowns? About 12, 13.
Yeah.
Another guy that's going to definitely be a game changer. But let's circle back a little bit to what got them to the Super Bowl. Championship weekend recap. Let's give our recaps on the championship weekend. So, obviously, we had the Chiefs coming on top against the Bengals, 23-20. And then the Eagles absolutely routing the San Francisco 49ers 31-7. A lot of controversy in that game. People say the Eagles didn't deserve that win. Niners down to their 4th-string quarterback. He couldn't even stay in the game. Had to go to McCaffrey at points. So, Ralphie, what do you think? Healthy Brock Purdy. Do you think a healthy Brock Purdy takes the Eagles down and brings the Niners to the Super Bowl?
Healthy Brock Purdy does not take this Eagles team down. You could have anybody under center at this 49ers team, and I feel like you're still going to win games, but this Eagles team is just so good this year that there's really nothing that's going to stop them.
Nah, I definitely agree with you there. I don't think Brock Purdy had what it took to lead a team to the Super Bowl this year. I mean, his play has been tremendous. You cannot deny that, but it's if the 7th-round rookie out of Iowa State, no really huge game experience in college as well, do you think he was taking a team to the Super Bowl, not even starting the whole year? I don't think so. I don't think Mr. Relevant clearly played higher to that standard, but I don't think he would have had what it took to do it.
Either way, I don't think Brock Purdy was taking this team past the Eagles, healthy or not. It just wouldn't happen. But now what do the San Francisco 49ers do about this quarterback situation?
They're going to have 4 quarterbacks. Well, I guess you guys say 3 quarterbacks going into this offseason that are all starter worthy. You have Trey Lance, who won that job from Jimmy Garoppolo, was expected to have. Some people expected an MVP-type season out of Trey Lance, and then the injury ended all for him. Jimmy Garoppolo comes back into the picture, and he plays great. Jimmy Garoppolo played like he did when he brought the 49ers to the Super Bowl back in 2020. And then there's Brock Purdy. Garoppolo goes down with an injury. You lose your first 2. People say, oh, wow, this season is over. No way the Niners can recover from this. And then Brock Purdy comes back into the game, into the picture out of nowhere, and he takes his team on an insane winning streak, just playing out of his mind. George Kittle said it. He leads the huddle like no other. And he brought them this far. You cannot take that away from him. But then he tears his UCL in the game this past weekend. So the Niners are going to have a lot of decisions, but I believe it's going to ultimately come down to Purdy and Lance. I think Garoppolo's time in San Francisco's over. He put his time in. He had a great career with San Francisco, but I think it's time for them to move on from him and his contract. Hopefully moves on to the New York Jets. Both of us New York Jets fans, I know I would like that.
I'd rather Carr, but getting back to it, I agree with you. I think the job's going to be between Purdy and Lance, but does Purdy come back from this UCL tear?
You could say, does Lance come back from his injury as well, though?
And that's an even bigger problem. That's an even bigger problem for the San Francisco 49ers. You're moving away from a veteran quarterback, and then you're going to go to 2 very young quarterbacks who Purdy proved himself in the playoffs with this insane roster, and Trey Lance, how many games did he play? He played like 3 games. So what did Trey Lance prove that he's worthy of anything yet? But at the same time, Brock Purdy has started 7 games. He did take his team this far, and you can't take that away from him, but it's a rough situation.
No, for sure, because you're going to move on from that veteran quarterback, and you're going to have two practical rookies battling it out for a spot. Are they going to be able to come back from their injuries and perform? I mean, Trey Lance stats in this 2 games against the Bears, he did not perform against the Bears. I mean, Justin Fields came out on top of that one. The rainy game, tough conditions, week 1, but still. And then against the Seahawks, we really didn't see much. We didn't see pretty much anything at all, just 30 yards and the injury.
Nothing really for Trey Lance.
Right, you have nothing to base off this year. You're basically going into the offseason, Trey Lance still you don't know anything. You don't know anything. It's been 2 years now, and you don't know how he's going to play in game. If you base it off of his one start against the Bears, you have nothing good to base it off of. So I believe so many people think that this is a good problem to have. You have 3 quarterbacks. Who do you move on from? Who do you start? This is a good problem to have. Some teams wish they had that problem. But I think when you take a deeper dive into it, it's actually not as easy for them as you think. You don't have 3 starting quarterbacks that you can just completely trust going into next season. It's like, is Purdy going to come back from this? Does he have what it takes? 6-month recovery time. He's going to be coming back right away. So, he's going to be missing practically the whole offseason, where he could have been fixing parts of his game that people will say were gifted to him by that Shanahan offense. But now he's not going to have an offseason. He's going to have to come back from the injury, training camp, UTAs, and then there's Trey Lance. He's going to be recovered. Just the whole situation is not as easy and I guess you can say good for the 49ers
as
people making it out to be. Right. So, where do you stand? Purdy, Lance, Garoppolo, maybe even look for – no, that would never happen. They're not going to look for another quarterback.
You don't look for another quarterback here. You got Garoppolo. He's 31. He still has time left in him. He's still not an elite quarterback, but he's still a very good quarterback, and he can definitely handle this offense and take them somewhere.
That's the thing. Yeah, Garoppolo's shown that he can run that San Francisco offense, brought him to a Super Bowl, to my point. Almost was an overthrow away from probably winning that Super Bowl. The NFC Championship last year was a dropped interception away from probably bringing his team back to the Super Bowl and could have got that ring as a starter. So I think Jimmy Garoppolo is another guy who gets a lot of unwarranted hate. He's a system quarterback. Is he really a product of the Shanahan system, or has he led this team to the playoffs, to the Super Bowl? And I think that he's going to be the most coveted name in this offseason. I think whatever team lands Jimmy Garoppolo, my first hot take, will automatically become a playoff team and even a championship contender if he does not stay with the San Francisco 49ers.
It all depends. You take a risk by leaving your two young quarterbacks, but I feel like just having Jimmy Garoppolo sit behind a young quarterback is just a waste at this point in his career. He still has time left. He's not just bailed out by Shanahan's offense. He's really not. He's proven it over and over again that he can play at this high level that he has shown us he's been playing at most of his career. So I'm not sure.
All right, let's take a look at his stats here. How many games we have from him? He came in against that for Lance in that Seahawks game, played great. Passer rating was 100. He played against the Broncos, Rams, Panthers, Falcons, Chiefs, Rams, Chargers. A lot of games for Garoppolo. He posted 2,500 yards to 16 touchdowns, 4 interceptions with a rating of 103. Do you look at those stats and say, washed 31-year-old quarterback who can't come back from this? I definitely don't. I think that San Francisco should take a deeper look at Garoppolo and maybe even look for a trade for Trey Lance, let Brock Purdy and Garoppolo battle it out. Because, he posted a great year. He did not turn the ball over. He threw for touchdowns, and then he also had that amazing run game to rely on, which also, helps. He didn't have to be that guy every game, and I think sometimes he could have been that guy, as you see by his stats. A lot of yards, touchdowns every game. So
the argument that could be made against that, though, is Brock Purdy, very similar stats to Jimmy G, except he's younger. What do you say? Do you say it's just Shanahan? Do you say they're both just products of Shanahan, or do you say it's the quarterback?
Obviously, the Shanahan system helps. Kyle Shanahan, we've seen, has put together one of the best offensive schemes that we've ever seen in the NFL, in football, regardless. We saw products of his system, Mike LaFleur, come over to the Jets. People were so excited thinking that he was going to be the next Kyle Shanahan, and Mike LaFleur did not work out with the Jets.
Underperformed.
Right. Now he's just got hired by the Rams, but that's, again, he got fired from an offensive coordinator job and immediately got hired right back to one. So people really do trust in Shanahan, but I think, I don't know, going off onto Kyle Shanahan here, I just think Kyle Shanahan is Kyle Shanahan, and what he does to quarterbacks and his offense, he's going to do no matter who it is. But in terms of a system quarterback, people said the same thing about Brady, and that was not true, clearly. Won a Super Bowl his first year out in New England. I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo is a prime system quarterback from Shanahan. But I don't think you can say that for Brock Purdy yet, because we have seen some amazing throws from Brock Purdy, but if you just kind of let it fly a little bit more, it'll be interesting to see how Purdy performed.
Yeah, Purdy needs more time.
Right. It's impossible to say that he can come in next year, even though he won 7 games. You also have to look at the defense he had, the run game he had, Christian McCaffrey. I mean, you have the best running back, the best defense, top 3 tight end, top 15, say, Deebo Samuel wide receiver, an amazing offensive line, Trent Williams, bona fide Hall of Famer, Michael McGlinchey. Just that he had a lot of help around him, and I'm not on the Purdy bandwagon. But anyway, we've talked a lot about that. Let's move on. Let's talk a little bit about the Bengals, the team that everyone, I feel like, wanted to beat the Chiefs once again. They did not. They almost pulled it off, but last-second penalty held them back. I mean, Joe Burrow played masterful. Besides the 2 interceptions, he did have 2 interceptions, but 26-40 passing, 270 yards, a touchdown. The run game definitely did not help him. I mean, Joe Mixon, Samaje Brown combined for 40 yards. He was actually the leading rusher as well. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins did their thing, combined 12 receptions, about 150 yards. But the big, big thing about this game was the last-second penalty on what has been the defensive hero for that game of Lou Anarumo, Staten Island natives defense, Joseph Asai. He played tremendous all game. Last second, he gets called for the penalty, pushing Mahomes out of bounds, 15 yards, sets up Harrison Butker, and he's going to drill that every time. So, I mean, it just feels terrible for Joseph Asai. I mean, Ralphie, what do you feel about Asai? I mean, like, how you feel about his performance and then ultimately what led to the end of the game?
I feel like he was the best defender all night, and in the moment, you can't really just kill him for that penalty. I don't think that you could judge him as a player. You could obviously judge his decision-making because that was terrible decision-making, but I really don't think that he had a terrible game. I don't think that he deserves all the hate that he's getting. And I just hope, I want to know what that Cincinnati locker room's like right now. Is everybody against Osai, or what's it like?
I mean, we saw Jermaine Pratt with very non-teammate comments after the game, said something along the lines like, "This is my last year," because it was contract year in Cincinnati, and said, "Why do you push him out of bounds?" So you say it was a penalty, deservingly, right?
No, it was definitely the play was definitely deserving of a penalty, but I don't think that all of his teammates should just write him off after that.
Oh, absolutely. Even if he played terrible, I mean, you're supposed to be a teammate. You shouldn't blame him for that regardless, but he, as you said, I do believe he was their best defensive player. The broadcast said it multiple times. He did play tremendous. Had a couple, I think 5 pressures he had on Mahomes, working against Orlando Brown, I'm pretty sure, one of the best tackles in football. So, I mean, great game from him, but just happens. I mean, it seems like you can't make it up almost. You play amazing, and then you pretty much end your team season, even though the Bengals could have won it. But
yeah, the issue here is if Butker misses that kick, what's the narrative? It
Right.
completely changes. Nobody cares what Osai did. It's like, wow, that was close. But the narrative completely changes if Butker misses that kick. And what if Osai doesn't push Mahomes out of bounds and Butker still makes the kick? It's the same thing.
Exactly. You cannot blame the game on him. They could have won the game other ways, and they could have ultimately lost it other ways. But anyway, that's what we have for NFL. We're going to segue now into the NBA. So last night we had a lot of huge NBA slate, but two main games we're going to focus on here today is the Magic versus 76ers, and Nets versus Lakers. So we're going to start it off. Magic and Sixers. Magic came out on top against the Sixers, who have just been dominant for the past couple of weeks. You said how many games were the win streak for the Sixers?
7-game win streak was snapped.
7-game win streak snapped for the Sixers by the Paolo Banchero led Orlando Magic. The rookie sensation does it again. He cannot be stopped. 6'10". He has a shot. He can shoot it from 3. Last night we saw him put up 29 and 9. I mean, how do you stop this guy? And then also, the Magic as a team did a tremendous job in the second half of stopping Joel Embiid. I mean, people say Embiid had 30 points, but the second half he didn't do much. He really didn't. But back to Banchero, I mean, he's got to be the Rookie of the Year, right? He's first on your
crazy stats, definitely.
Banchero averages, I'm pretty sure. We'll get this up real quick, but I'm pretty sure his averages are 21 a night.
Yeah, last night he had 29 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 rebound away from that double-double.
Yeah, so his averages 21 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, and he shoots 32% from 3. It's not a bad percentage there for him. For a 6'10" power forward rookie, I mean, he's kind of just taken over games, and he deserves a lot of credit for some success the Orlando Magic have had this year. A lot of it has to go to him. I mean, he's just been playing tremendous.
Yeah, 90% of their success goes to him, definitely. Another player that had a decent game last night was Markelle Fultz, double-double, 12 points, 10 assists.
Fultz, too, I mean, he'll never, I don't think, ever live up to the hype that he had coming out of Washington. First-round pick, he was a bust the first years of his career, but he's definitely making a nice comeback here in his career for sure in Orlando. They utilize him very well. He's a great playmaker, and we've seen him perform fairly well in Orlando, especially the last 2 years. So really like what I see out of him. But just to go over here, Lakers versus Nets. The Nets take down the Lakers pretty convincingly. Kyrie Irving with the fourth quarter. I mean, you can't even imagine how good of a fourth quarter that he would have had. He ends up with, I believe, 26 points for Kyrie last night.
Yeah, 26, 7 rebounds, and 6 assists. Now, the Nets playing AD and LeBron-less Lakers win by 20. What does that say for the Lakers now?
I mean, I think the Lakers didn't play as bad as people would have expected. They kept it close. At a halftime break, they made it a, 2-point game or something around there. But I think LeBron and AD, this game is completely different. But then you also have to bring up KD, the best player in the world, probably not there. The Nets started off without KD struggling. Lost their first 3 games. I believe it was to the Celtics, Thunder, Spurs. They came back, and they've been playing good as of late. But the KD injury, it's been monumental to this team. Like, what are you seeing different from this Nets team since the KD injury?
I've seen different players step up. Cam Thomas took a step up. He had 21 points last night with Patty Mills. And you just see a lot of the role players stepping into bigger roles with KD out.
That is a huge point you bring up. Cam Thomas, he had a great rookie year, and we haven't seen the production from him, but he comes back in KD's absence, and he's been playing tremendous. I mean, put the game away last night with a beautiful behind-the-leg step-back 3, just iced it, and I really love what I see out of Cam Thomas. I think he has a future in Brooklyn, along with Claxton. The young core is looking a lot better.
Claxton stepping up.
Nick Claxton's having a tremendous year. Definitely having a great year. He's scoring the ball, and he's just been doing what the Nets expected of him. I think he's playing a lot stronger, more aggressive, and these role players for the Nets really stepping up recently. And if they continue to play like this when KD comes back, I don't know if it's going to be possible to stop this team. But, I mean, how do you feel? What do you think? KD comes back. what do you think this Nets team looks like?
KD comes back. I think this Nets team, I don't know. I feel like the role players take a step down. I feel like they don't play at the same high level that they've been playing at because I feel like they almost have a reliance on KD to just take that role. That's just my opinion.
No, that's a very good point as well. I mean, do they continue playing the way they have been when KD comes back? We won't know. I mean, Yuta Watanabe's been shooting the ball really well for the Nets. He hasn't even been playing as well since the absence of KD. So we'll see how he plays when KD comes back. Nets need that 3-point shot back. But tonight, the Lakers continue their New York contest. They have the Knicks. Heat take on the Cavs, Clippers against the Bulls, Hornets, Bucks, and Pelicans, Nuggets. Nikola Jokic, Zion Williamson, two of the best players in basketball going at it. But last sport today, we're going into the MLB here. The offseason, it's safe to say, has come to a close. And, man, what an MLB offseason. I mean, ridiculous amounts of spending. Aaron Judge, the huge contract, the whole Aaron Judge controversy resolved. Going back to the Yankees, and then you have Trey Turner, Xander Bogaerts, Carlos Correa, DeGrom, Swanson, Rodon. Just an insane free agency class. But what we really want to focus on here is we're going to do a little comparison of the Yankees to the Mets offseason. So the Yankees, only 2 acquisitions were Carlos Rodon and Tommy Kahnle. Tommy Kahnle making his 3rd return to the Yankees, I believe. But, I mean, Carlos Rodon is going to be huge for the Yankees, I believe. Like, just absolutely massive, solidifying that rotation. So, I mean, what do you have to say about Rodon signing over there for the Yankees?
For the Yankees, I'm not sure. I don't know how it's going to pan out. I'm not very confident in Rodon.
Carlos Rodon, non-believer?
Non-believer.
I mean, his playoff stats definitely are not the best. But coming off the year he had, I mean, why you not a Rodon believer? Tell us why. Why no Rodon?
I don't know. Biggest place that the Yankees struggle is the playoffs, and then you get someone that's very inconsistent in the playoffs, especially facing tougher opponents in the playoffs than the Mets. What does it bring?
I mean, that's a good point. You're right. Yankees pitching seems to struggle in the playoffs. Yankees team seems to struggle in the playoffs. Rodon, not known for his playoff performance, but then
Aaron
again,
Judge, perfect example. Record-breaking season. What does he do in the playoffs?
does not perform.
Not there.
But his last 2 seasons, I mean, the 2.88 with the Giants comes over from Chicago, where he posted a 2.37 in 24 games. I don't know. I think it was a good signing. Maybe you can say a little overpriced. I mean, his average salary is going to be $27 million. Put a lot of money into him and Judge. I mean, key losses. Yankees lost Benintendi, Tyone. Carpenter did not play very well towards the end of the year. It'd be interesting to see if he's going to be able to perform again like he did. But then Rizzo and Judge coming back are obviously ginormous. Tommy Kahnle replaces actually Chad Green, just signed with, I believe, earlier today. I'm going to have to look that up. But he did sign today, about 2 hours ago, signs to the Toronto Blue Jays, staying in the division, leaving the country. But Miguel Castro, he went to Arizona. Chapman also recently signed with Kansas City. Be interesting to see if he can get his form back.
Yeah, I don't think Chapman was that big of a loss.
No, for sure. I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I think he's kind of cooked.
Yeah, I think he's done.
Then the New York Mets. What an offseason. Seems like we've been saying that for 3 years now.
Yup.
DeGrom leaving. How much of an impact do you think DeGrom leaving is going to have on the Mets? I mean, one of the best pitchers we've ever seen. But he did not play a lot recently for the Mets with his injury. So how much of an impact do you say DeGrom leaving has on the Mets? Because the whole first half of 2 seasons ago and a lot of this year, he wasn't there, and the Mets still did perform. So, I mean, hear from you. What do you think? How much of an impact?
You get rid of DeGrom, you get Verlander. Verlander, obviously aging. They only signed him for 2 years, but I feel like it's just going to be more of the same. I feel like there's not going to be that big of an impact, but the problem is you're only going to have Verlander for X amount of years before he's cooked too. That's the biggest problem, where it is just such a short contract for Verlander at such an older age.
Verlander's going to be 40 years old about a month into the season. But, I mean, how can you just deny his performance the last couple of years? You can't. He's a Cy Young. Edwin Diaz extension, huge. Then they lose 2 starting pitchers, Taijuan Walker, Chris Bassett, and Jacob deGrom. Make that 3. They bring in Verlander and Jose Quintana, they believe. Yes, Jose Quintana from the St. Louis Cardinals. So the Mets offseason, I'd say, is extremely successful. I mean, you just scroll down, the names just keep coming on acquisition. Seth Lugo lost to San Diego. Didn't have a great year, but Mets legend, I'd say. Adam Ottavino back with the Mets. Trevor Williams, David Robertson. David Robertson, I believe, one of the most underrated signings in this whole offseason for the Mets. He had a great season last year with Philadelphia at 38 years of age, 37. A guy who just kind of fell off the face of the earth, was out of the MLB, pitching for the USA national team in tournaments, and he comes back and posts an amazing season with Philadelphia. So huge shout-out to Steve Cohen for getting David Robertson. You know, I know my shout-out will mean a lot to Steve Cohen. So good job there, David Robertson. And, I mean, this Mets offseason, I mean, what's your grade for the Mets offseason? Because I know I'm giving it an A+.
A minus.
A-. What do you say? DeGrom loss?
DeGrom loss, Verlander replacement. Verlander is not a long-term replacement. If you want to win long-term games, you don't sign a vet. He's still good, and he's still going to be very good, but I don't know. I don't think he has long-term with the Mets.
I mean, you got to look at the Mets offense, though. Lindor, Alonso almost solidified that infield. But Correa returned to the Twins, one of the biggest surprises of the offseason. Then there's Danny Burgers, Danny Vogelbach.
As long as Vogelbach's on the Mets, I'll enjoy watching their games.
So if Danny Vogelbach wins a World Series, I will be happy for the New York Mets as a Yankees fan.
Yeah,
but
do you like the Yankees?
Huh?
Yankees fan?
Yankees fan, in fact. Compare the Yankees offseason to the Mets. I think I'm going to give this Yankees offseason what you gave the Mets. I think A-. I think Aaron Judge back is just tremendous. Rodon, Benintendi leaving, I think, wasn't ideal. But it's not like the Yankees don't. I mean, Brian Cashman expressed all his support for Aaron Hicks, too, recently. I mean, I don't know. Aaron Hicks, switch hitter, if he can return to his old self, that would be huge. I mean, he had a couple ginormous moments for the Yankees. Even this year, the grand slam against the Astros, I mean, just incredible.
Let's just hope the Yankees could keep it going in the playoffs.
But yeah, I'm going to give the Yankees an A- offseason, Mets A+. What about you? What do you give the Yankees?
B+.
B+, yeah, it's about that.
About the same. I just hope that they could keep it going the whole season because making the playoffs is not the problem. Just keeping it going in that postseason.
Right. Yeah, that's been the problem for sure. So we're done with our 3 topics. Now we're going to pass it over to producer Pete. Mr. Pete Kennedy, he has some wild card questions for us.
I do have some wild card questions. If you could lower my mic a little bit too, that'd be perfect. But basically, what I want to ask you guys about is twofold. I'll stay on the baseball thing for starters here because with that specifically, I think you can easily say the Mets made big time improvements in the pitching staff, but the offense is going to look pretty much the same when you look at that lineup and who's going to be the key people they lean on. They re-signed McNeil at a great number, which is exciting, but who's the new face for the Mets on offense that's going to make a difference? Is it going to be one of the rookies, Alvarez, the catcher, Vientos? Is there any of those guys who you think is going to come up and make an impact?
Me personally, I am a huge Francisco Alvarez supporter. I think anything is better at catcher than what the Mets had these past 2 years. I mean, James McCann just was not it. I think you can agree with that. Thomas Nido, who's not a starting catcher in the MLB, obviously. And I think Francisco Alvarez is going to have a huge year. But also, I'm talking a lot of good about the Mets. I don't do this often, but I think the Mets lineup it's good in itself. I mean, you lose Conforto. You didn't have him this year. You didn't lose him, but
right.
He's going to be in San Francisco. Nimmo back, McNeil back. You basically have the same offense. And, I mean, Why? Do you say the Mets offense underperformed a little bit this season?
I think when it came down to it, they were more nervous about scoring runs than keeping other offenses at bay, right? The
Yeah.
power is the big question mark. Pete Alonso is the true only power hitter in that lineup. You have other guys who can hit maybe between 15 and 25 home runs on good years, but Alonso's the true power guy, and it's a heavy burden to wear as being the only guy who can consistently put the ball, deep into the gaps and over the fence. So that's going to be difficult. And the one part that you guys forgot on the Mets front as well that our other producer, Rob Russo, just shouted out to me, Kodai Senga, the new pitcher from Japan for the Mets, could be electric. We'll see how he, makes his debut into the major leagues, but he's a guy who has the stuff. He throws near 100. He has the forkball. He's got nasty stuff. He could be, in theory, if not an ace, a really good number 2.
Kodai Senga got, 7 years, I think, from the Mets, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, 7 years. I mean, he definitely can take – he's a Cy Young talent if he produces the way he did in Japan over here in the MLB.
Yeah.
But what do you think, Ralphie, answering his question about the Mets offense? How you feel about Alvarez guys coming up? What do you think?
Danny Burgers.
All about Vogelbach.
He's
all about Vogelbach.
I think he's a face of the Mets. 100%.
You see that he slimmed down a little bit.
Yeah,
He did slim
I was
down a
reading
little
that.
bit.
Some people are upset about that. Good for him. Skinny boy summer maybe coming up. We'll see what happens with Daniel Vogelbach. Question on the Yankees front here. What do we think about Volpe, right? Anthony Volpe's been this lauded over prospect for a long time. He's a shortstop. Shortstop was a hole last year as Connor Falefa did not live up to the glove he was supposed to have, and we obviously know he's not much of a hitter. Is this the year that Volpe finally cracks the Major League roster for the Yankees and makes an impact, or are we going to be waiting and complaining? I'm not a Yankees fan, but are Yankee fans going to be waiting and complaining that IKF is still the shortstop?
Right. This is actually a topic that I love talking about, the Yankees farm. I think, is it time for Volpe to come up? I don't know. We didn't really see much AAA production out of Volpe. I mean, we did, but he didn't play good in AAA when he came up. 22 games, see some stats here. In the AAA, he struck out 30% of the time. I think it's a time for Oswald. I think Oswald Peraza could come up before Volpe. I think we saw him play this year, Peraza, and he was super solid. I mean, he was. I don't think it's time for Volpe. I think if you give Volpe a full season in AAA, or if Volpe just absolutely tears up AAA this year, then you could say, all right, well, we can bring this guy up. IKF not performing, bring up Volpe, see what he does. Kind of like what happened with Peraza, even though it was due to injury he came up. But Peraza had an exceptional year. I mean, he hit 306 in 18 games for the Yankees. And Volpe's still 22. You wait another year, bring him up at 23, and let's say you want to stick with Volpe. You don't want Peraza. If Peraza does play this year instead of Volpe, I think Oswald Peraza would be very expendable. You could trade him possibly, and then you could ride with Anthony Volpe, your first-round pick from a couple years back.
Yeah, I say you just let Volpe develop a little longer.
No rush then for the Yankees.
Right,
Even though
exactly.
Yankee fans have been clamoring for him for years, I kind of agree with you guys, though. You have to wait for the guy to be ready, and the strikeout number is glaring at AAA last year, and the power isn't exactly there either. Right. So how's that going to translate against better pitching talent? All right, last question, wild card question for you two who are both Jets fans. Is that correct?
In fact.
You guys
Deadly.
did not mention, when you quickly brought up the Jets before, about their quarterback situation. You mentioned Jimmy Garoppolo. Ralph, you mentioned Derek Carr. But no one mentioned Aaron Rodgers.
Right.
Aaron Rodgers, future Hall of Famer, 2-time MVP in the last 3 seasons. Jets fans, what do we think? Do you want to see Aaron Rodgers in green but not the Packers green? Do you want to see him here in New York? Do you think he could handle it?
Here's if he can handle it. I think he can absolutely handle it. I don't think handling it is going to be an issue for a Hall of Fame Super Bowl champion. I think it's what it's going to cost to bring Aaron Rodgers in. The philosophy of the Jets has been young guys, develop them, draft them, acquire more draft picks, draft more young guys, develop them. And it's been working the last couple of years. We saw, if it wasn't for injury and just absolute, terrible quarterback play, unexcusable quarterback play, I think you see the Jets in the playoffs. Breece Hall was such an amazing rookie season, and then Elijah Vera Tucker also got hurt on the line, and it seemed like the Jets' offensive line just collapsed after that. So I don't know if it's worth expanding, getting rid of all this draft capital. Well, then you got to look at this side, which I think I'm leaning more towards. You break the draft this year. You trade your first round pick, second round pick, and it'll probably take another first in the future. Aaron Rodgers comes in and he wins you a Super Bowl. How can you ever regret that, even if it does not pay off down the road? If Aaron Rodgers comes in, works with Hackett, a guy who he's worked with before, which, side note, I love the Nathaniel Hackett hire. We'll talk more about that on a later date. I think Aaron Rodgers, if you have to trade everything for Aaron Rodgers, I don't really care about the cap space because I don't really think you're going to need it if you bring in a guy like him. I think bringing in Aaron Rodgers brings the Jets completely over the top. Breece Hall comes back, has the amazing season he did, and I think Aaron Rodgers paired with Garrett Wilson, I think it'd be hard to say the Jets aren't a top 5 Super Bowl contender.
Yeah, and comparing the Jets and Giants for a second, we're talking so much about paying Daniel Jones and what's that going to mean to the cap of the New York Giants and their ability to help Daniel Jones with receivers, with offensive line, with defensive players. The cap starts to get tight, and what are they going to do? That's because Daniel Jones is mediocre to good.
Right.
He's not great. Aaron Rodgers is great, and they also have on the Jets front all of these players on rookie deals. Elijah Moore, Garrett Wilson, you already mentioned. Obviously, Sauce Gardner. Their cornerback room is fantastic. Their defense is fantastic. They're more ready-made. And if they had decent quarterback play, not even great quarterback play, like you said, James, they would have been in the playoffs this year. That's why I'm pro taking the risk for Aaron Rodgers and full send for Gang Green here in New York.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I just think there's games you look back in this Jets season. I say both games against the Patriots, a half-decent NFL quarterback wins you those games.
Right.
100%.
Against Detroit, Zach Wilson didn't play poor, but I think there's 31 quarterbacks in the NFL that could have played better against Detroit and won that game. So it's just those are 3 games you win, you're in the playoffs. And a quarterback is just so important for this team. It's what we need to bring us over the edge.
And I got to ask Ralph, because you seemed pretty pro Jimmy Garoppolo. You both did, frankly. I kind of find Jimmy Garoppolo to be the epitome of mediocre. He's a decent player. He's not going to lose you many games. He's not going to win you many games. So maybe if you go that route with the Jets, he's going to be much cheaper, and that would be the argument to keep Jimmy Garoppolo around. But if we're talking about Jimmy G and even Derek Carr, let alone Aaron Rodgers, I don't see them in the same class.
I don't see them in the same class either. I think that Derek Carr is borderline top 10 consistently every year, off year this year. But I do think that Derek Carr is easily the better quarterback. Honestly, I don't want Jimmy G in green.
You don't want him?
I do not want him.
Even though you were kind of heaping some of his praises before.
Definitely a good player, but I do not want him in green.
Got it.
That point, we could just go with Derek Carr. Now, in my opinion, there's 3 quarterbacks that the Jets look at now. They look at Lamar. He's young. They look at Derek Carr. Younger than Aaron Rodgers. Still has time left. And they have Rodgers, obviously. Derek Carr, he's going to be cheaper. And he's going to last a little longer than Rodgers will in the league. And with that, you could also look at developing Zach Wilson a little more. That's why I like any of the veteran quarterbacks better than Lamar, because even if you keep Zach Wilson as a backup quarterback, you can still hope that he picks a few things up from Rodgers, Carr, and you hope that maybe one day he could be somewhat of a decent NFL quarterback. Now, with Rodgers coming to the Jets, once again, you just have such a young team and a veteran quarterback. And I really think that's what the Jets need. I feel like you don't take a chance with a young quarterback. Lamar has not played a full season. I feel like you stick with the veteran quarterback here because that's what the Jets have needed forever, and you run with it.
I mean, I'm going to disagree on Jimmy G. Clearly, as I've showed before, I'm a big Jimmy G supporter. I think if the Jets had Jimmy G already this season, they're a 12-5 football team. Or you could say that 10-7, even that, with the Breece Hall injury. But I think you pair Jimmy G with a healthy Breece Hall playing better than he did his rookie year, and you put those weapons around him, I think he's good enough because he's already done it before.
Good enough. Why do you settle for mid? Why do you settle for good enough when you could have more?
Well, if you can't get better, if it's impossible to get better, then Jimmy G is the best you're going to get. If Derek Carr isn't affordable or wants to make the move to New York, he has to want to make the move. Same with Aaron Rodgers. If it comes down to that, who else do you go to? And I think Jimmy G can be that guy. I think he can lead a team to a Super Bowl championship with the correct pieces around him and the defense the Jets have built.
So you're not saying Jimmy G is plan A. He's plan B, or in this case, plan G, because you don't want that to be the number one goal for the Jets. But if that's the backup plan,
Right.
you're in really good shape.
I would agree
If
with
that's
that.
the backup plan for the Jets, I'm just as happy as plan A.
And you talked about Lamar not finishing a full season, Ralph. Jimmy G doesn't
Right.
finish full seasons very frequently either. So it's another thing, another wrinkle for the Jets situation to kind of figure out. But that's all I got, Producer Pete, over here. So you guys take it away and finish up the rest of your show.
So, I mean, that's all you got. That's pretty much all we've got as well. So, I thank you, everyone, if you listened through this podcast. We're super, super happy again to get this whole podcast network started. Our podcast, the Farrell Podcast Network. So, I mean, yeah, that's pretty much all we have. We expect to be doing about 2 shows a week. And I've been James Westgate.
I'm Rafael Donniacuo.
And we will see you guys next time. Thank you for listening in.